Knowledge without action is useless. Admit it. Some of you wait way too long before taking action. On the other side, some of you are way too impulsive. And you may not even be fully aware of where you live on that spectrum. Let's unpack this a little bit, and then at the end, I'll identify some specific categories where you might need to take immediate action or maybe wait a little bit longer. Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped here in Atlanta, Georgia, one of Atlanta's original audition taping services, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. Okay, knowledge is great. Knowledge is power. But we live in an information age where knowledge is available to everyone, for the most part. I can search online for anything. I can discover a YouTube video about anything. And honestly, much of my knowledge, your knowledge, is useless. That is, without use. I mean, let's face it, that life hack that I saw on Instagram yesterday that I was like, whoa, I was today years old when I realized blah, blah, blah. If I don't actually put that life hack into use, then it's useless. It serves no point other than taking up space in my brain. So my first point is to be a little more self-aware about how this access to information can be great and also useless. But let's talk about our acting careers. This is where people like myself, in full disclosure, might need a cautionary tale about how we try to hoard too much information. See, for someone like me, nonchalant, easygoing, calm, stable, I like to take in tons of information before I make a decision or take action. But how much knowledge do I really need before making that decision and taking that step forward? I can get paralyzed by waiting to get all the information. I've talked about on some previous videos this idea of the law of inertia, that objects at rest tend to stay at rest. And so if I keep hoarding more information, what I'm really doing is just reinforcing my own static nature. I just sit in place, metaphorically speaking, and do not take that step forward towards this goal that maybe I'm looking at. Now, sometimes that inaction can pay off depending on how you look at it. For instance, in the early 2000s, I was watching a lot of my friends in acting class pick up and move to LA. And in the back of my mind, I knew that it was inevitable that if I wanted to be a successful actor, I had to move to LA. There was just nothing really in Atlanta to offer an actor like myself to have a long-term career. But I waited. And I waited, and eventually a tax incentive arrived, and then it got reworked, and suddenly by 2012, there was an influx of TV shows and movies, and wow, turns out my inaction paid off because the industry came here. But in all honesty, I'm just hiding behind that positive outcome. I had nothing to do with that tax incentive, so it wasn't my action that led to this fruitful industry here. It was my inaction that sort of coincidentally led me to still be here when the industry came. And the more I reflect, as someone who tends to wait too long, those rare times where I leapt without really thinking too much, wow, those times have really paid off. Now, I don't recommend you being impulsive, especially if you already are impulsive. But if you're like me, you may benefit every once in a while from just taking a leap before you have all the information. So if you resonate with my type of personality, then perhaps when it comes to your career and some specific topics that we'll talk about in a second, you might just need a kick in the pants. Because let's say you're at the start of your acting journey and you're thinking, maybe I just need a few more acting classes or workshops before I self-submit for that first audition. Well, if you're at that stage in your career where you haven't auditioned for anything yet, and you've been training steadily for months or longer, perhaps you're waiting for other reasons. It might not be that you truly need more craft under your belt, more experience in class. You might just have this fear of that first audition. So you might just need to take that leap and self-submit. Or maybe you're a little bit more savvy. You've been self-submitting. You actually have a few independent film credits under your belt, maybe even a commercial or two that you self-submitted for. But you're still hesitating to submit to that first agency. So you're thinking, I'll just, a couple more months in class. In the new year, I'll do it. Or I'll wait until I get into that showcase that my teacher is talking about that's in the springtime. Be careful, because it might be time for you to take that leap now. Only you can answer that for yourself, or if you have a trusted mentor. But if you're like me and you tend to wait, maybe it's time to take that leap. Or maybe you're a little bit more experienced and you're at that point where you're tired of waiting for other people to hire you. So you want to create your own stories, but you're waiting because you want to make one more revision on that draft of your script, or you really want all the pieces of the puzzle to align before you start to raise money or before you pull the trigger on setting a schedule. If you're doing that right now, then perhaps what you're actually not admitting is that there's this fear of the outcome, and that you don't have control over it, and that you want it to be perfect. And so you're just thinking one more day, one more week, one more tweak will somehow ensure success. And what you might end up doing is kicking the can so far down the road that you never end up shooting your project. In fact, in the summer of 2021, at the height of COVID, the vaccine had just become available. I was tired of waiting to shoot our spy adventure, Roger Espionager. Check it out at that link right there. And so I pulled the trigger. COVID had already given us an extra year of reworking our script, but I just wanted to make the darn thing. And so we just committed to it. And funny enough, 2-3 weeks before filming, we didn't have a DP. Now, we ended up with the amazing Tom Pritchard, who just really brought so much to the table, and that was serendipity that it all worked out. The point is, I could have kicked the can down the road and paused filming and gotten, more budget from outside sources, but we just decided to say, you know what? We're going to use our savings. We're going to do this ourselves, and we're just going to trust that all of the parts will come together, and they did. Now, the other side of the coin, as it relates to this specific project, Roger Espionager, is a cautionary tale on pulling the trigger too fast. So we didn't really have a plan of what we were going to do after we finished the project. It was sort of like, well, we'll figure it out later. We'll submit to some film festivals, etc. I could have benefited from a little bit more research up front as to what was the best path forward for a pilot like this. Long story short, the project has sort of died, if you will. I mean, again, you can watch it on our YouTube channel and give us some feedback. And if you're a rich billionaire who has nothing better to do with their money and wants to produce a full season, great, hit us up. But otherwise, that lack of foresight, that lack of research kind of came back to bite us in the end. And so while I do not regret pulling the trigger to produce the project, I do have some thoughts about how I could have navigated the post-production into distribution phase of things so that I might have had some momentum to continue producing the project. And so being too impulsive is a real danger for you as an actor in your career. If you are impatient about getting that agent, you might be tempted to lie on your resume or to call in favors with other people too soon. And then you get that audition for that agency, but you're not ready for it. And so now you've actually made a bad first impression with that agent, and you now don't have a chance of getting with them now or in the future due to that bad first impression. So if you're the type that thinks that you're destined to be famous, and so you need that to happen yesterday, please stop, take a breath, and maybe contact a mentor if you have one. If not, seek out in your friend network or in your connections someone who is maybe 10 steps ahead of you and seek their counsel. Don't ask them for a referral to an agent. Again, it's probably too soon if they're 10 steps ahead of you. But you might be able to get some good feedback or counsel from them if they're willing. Maybe they might even become a mentor of yours in the long run, but hopefully they can give you some counsel as to whether or not it's too soon or perfect timing for you to take that leap and move forward with your career in whatever area that you're looking at. So the overall point here is that in regards to the different aspects of your career, there are possibly certain decisions that you're waiting too long. You're trying to gather too much information before you pull that trigger to move to LA or to New York or to that bigger city, or to finally self-submit for that first audition or to that first agency, or to switch agencies because if you're honest with yourself, you've been unhappy for 6 months or 2 years or whatever. Other decisions, you need to slow down and not get so antsy and not think that life is passing you by or that the opportunities are limited or that this industry is dying or whatever. Don't be that Chicken Little who thinks the sky is falling and time is short and I have to act now. So as we close down this year, 2024, if you're watching this when we've posted it, here are a few categories you can consider as it relates to taking action or maybe pausing and waiting before you make that decision. If you're impulsive, feel free to skip this section and just have a cookie. But if you're the type that has a low tolerance for risk and you like to gather as much information as possible, this might be an invitation to finally push yourself forward, take that risk, take that leap, and see what happens. What about headshots? Have you updated them since COVID? No? Oh, you're long overdue. I'm sorry. You just got to pull the trigger if you have not taken headshots in over 5 years. You are a physically different person. You're emotionally a different person. So please make that a priority in the next couple months to get new headshots. What about training? Haven't done a class or a workshop in 6 months, 6 years? Never, because you're brand new? Then it's definitely time to take that leap and sign up for a class, at least audit a class, because you need that training. You need to be a well-trained actor. There's a reason why doctors go to school for so freaking long and lawyers go to law school. It should not be any different for actors. Your training doesn't stop at 12th grade. It doesn't stop even if you got a BFA or an MFA in acting. You need to keep training. Quickly, on the flip side, if you're a chronic student, in other words, you're always in a class and you just go from one workshop to the next, but you never really take that leap towards getting the agent or hustling on your own to get auditions yourself, then that might be the problem. You're getting too complacent as a perpetual student. You might be better served by taking a pause from that training. Speaking of self-submitting, maybe it's time for you to start scouring the interwebs for opportunities that may be low or even no pay. But if you don't have anything on your resume, you have to start somewhere, and you can't wait for Hollywood to come knocking. You got to put yourself out there first. You need to build up a resume of experience. Even if it's credits that don't end up on your resume or don't even end up on IMDb, that's fine. You need that on-set experience. You need to figure out what this world of TV and film is all about before you can start to expect to be paid for your craft. Another idea to explore, especially if you're an introvert like me, is to expand your network. Being in a group class setting is amazing for expanding your network. You can do things like attend film festivals. Here in Atlanta, there's things like Eat, Drink, and Be Indie, which happens once a month. There are other events that happen on a regular basis. If you're a union member, be sure to attend your local meetings and any other functions that are sponsored by the union. It's a great way to meet fellow union actors. In short, this is a relationship business. So if you don't have any relationships, then you need to start investigating that. Speaking of relationships, maybe it's time to submit for that agent. Enough said. And as I touched on earlier in the video, maybe it's time to finally commit to making your own story. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the perfect script. You don't even have to have a script. You can put out YouTube videos. You can try to create clever, funny IG reels or TikTok videos. There are so many ways that you can express that inner desire to tell stories that does not have to be at the level of David Fincher or Steven Spielberg or Greta Gerwig or any of these famous people. Start small. Start now. So you can start getting your voice out there so that you can put out some crappy stuff and then start getting better at it. And lastly, to kind of pull on a thread that I had in my previous video, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, and that is maybe it's time to pull the trigger on a new venture within this realm of the entertainment business. That is, maybe you've been hesitating to get into voiceover and this is now the time. Or maybe you have wanted to make some money as a host, whether it's an on-camera host or a live host. There are so many different facets to this industry. I mean, have you heard of being a standardized patient? It's where teaching hospitals will bring in actors to pretend to have different conditions so that doctors who are in training can learn how to have bedside manner, how to diagnose, etc. It can be a great way to make extra money, and I know folks who do it on the regular, and they love it. Okay, hopefully those examples spark some ideas in your own mind. And as I wrap this up, I'll just remind you that I admit to being on the end of the spectrum where I'm a little too slow in making decisions sometimes. I want all the information. I want it to be the right decision, especially the older I get, because I don't want to waste resources or time or money. Blah, blah, blah. I just need a kick in the pants sometimes. Some of you, on the other hand, are too impulsive and you just need to slow your roll. So where do you fall on that spectrum? Drop a comment below. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.